Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS. I'm Harpreet Singh here with a daily analysis of the Hindu from 27th of September 2024. Let's see what all articles we have picked up for today's analysis. The first article is General Consent and the CBI. Second is Police Custody versus the Judicial Custody. Third, Make in India 10th Anniversary. UPS, NPS and OPS. That means the various schemes related to the pension and how they have evolved over the time. Bhagat Singh's anniversary. It is today's Bhagat Singh's birth anniversary. So we are going to see his ideology, his contribution to the freedom struggle. Let's begin today's analysis. In today's newspaper, we basically saw that Karnataka government withdraws general consent for CBI. Now, this is a very important aspect when we are studying about from the perspective of preliminary examination as well as the mains examination. So when we study the general consent CBI in the states, we need to understand and study something about the CBI and what this concept of consent or general consent basically means. First, let's see. The Central Bureau of Investigation is governed by the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act of 1946, which requires the CBI to obtain consent of the state government before it can investigate crimes in a state. Because it is a central body, now this act basically requires the Central Bureau of Investigation that they should have the consent of the state before any investigation can take place within that state. So they are bound by the law to take the consent from the state. Now, what do you mean by the consent with respect to the CBI? Let's understand that. When I'm talking about consent given by the state governments, one government or the various governments for that matter, are basically of two kinds. First is the general consent. Second is the case-specific consent. Now, what do you mean by the general consent? If a state gives a general consent to the CBI, then what happens? It allows the CBI to operate seamlessly within the state, those who have given the consent. That means the CBI does not require repeated consent from the state. They can seamlessly investigate cases in a particular state who have given the general consent to the CBI. Now, in case the general consent has not been given by a state government to the CBI to investigate, in that case, the CBI can request the state to give a case-specific consent to the CBI in order to investigate the matter. This is known as case-specific. That means if general consent is lacking, CBI is required to apply for consent on case-by-case basis so that the CBI can investigate a specific matter. Now, why this restriction has been imposed on the CBI is actually also can be viewed from the aspect of a federal structure in the country. In order to respect the federal structure, the CBI, which is being a central body, has to basically take the consent of the states. So let's move ahead and see. Withdrawal of general consent. Because just now we read that Karnataka, along with many other states, have also withdrawn the general consent which they had previously given to the CBI. Now, what does that mean? It would mean that the CBI will not be able to register any fresh case involving central government officials or private personals in particular state without prior permission of that state government. That means without the state consent, they cannot basically file a case against the central government officials or the private persons in that particular state. But now one thing that you should keep in mind that can even be asked as a statement in your prelims. In case certain case has been registered and an investigation is taking place before the consent is withdrawn by the state government, the CBI has the authority to continue with the investigation of that particular case even if the consent is withdrawn. Example C, if the CBI continues to investigate a cases in a state government, but if those cases which are being investigated prior to the general consent being withdrawn, they can continue. Again, repeating in simple words. Supposingly, a case was being investigated by the CBI, and after, let us say, 1 or 2 months, the state government withdraws a general consent, but CBI had already registered a case or investigating a case before the general consent was withdrawn. So CBI can continue with the investigation of the case because that case was being investigated prior to the consent being withdrawn. So this is one of the clauses that you should understand, which I have put over here, right? Now, this is the basic aspect of the general consent, and the CBI, right? Now, let's move on to another topic which has been in the newspaper and becomes very important from the perspective of understanding from your preliminary examination and the mains examination. That is police custody versus the judicial custody. Now, please understand, Supreme Court, what is the context of this? The Supreme Court delivered a split verdict in custodial death case in which the police officials were convicted under section 304 of the IPC. And there was some custodial death that took place under which the police officers were basically convicted. Now, first of all, we should understand what is custodial death. What do you mean by custodial death? Death that takes place while a person is in custody. Let us say whether it is a police custody or let us say judicial custody, which we have to see a comparison. But when a person is in custody and the death takes place, that is basically custody. Now, what do you mean by simply the word custody? Custody in literal sense means someone assigned for protection or care or guardianship or something. Means someone assigned for the protection of care or guardianship or something. Now, in this particular case, please remember that this is simply the definition, what we need to know with respect to custodial death. But what is basically a judicial custody or the police custody becomes very, very important. Now, let's see that. This is a brief comparison that I have given to you. Now, this becomes important from the perspective of your prelims as well as mains. Now, see, police custody, that means police have the physical custody of the accused. While in case of a judicial custody, the accused is in the custody of the concerned magistrate, the judicial magistrate. In case of the police custody, the accused is locked up in a lockup, right? While in case of a judicial custody, the person is in a jail, not in a lockup. In case of a police custody, the person has to appear before the concerned magistrate within 24 hours. While in case of a judicial custody, a person is kept in jail until the court gives bail. Police officers in charge of the case are not allowed to interrogate the suspect without the approval of the court. Now, this is the difference. Because till 24 hours when the person is within the police custody, the police can ask any question, interrogate, it is under their, let us say, discretion. But in this particular case, when they are under the judicial custody, the police cannot interrogate a person who is accused without the permission of the court. That means gives a more protection to the person who is accused. Police custody begins when the police officer arrests a suspect upon receiving a complaint of an FIR. In case of a judicial custody begins when the public prosecutor satisfies the court that the purpose of investigation custody of an accused is necessary. In case of a police custody, the maximum period is 24 hours and may extend to 15 days as a whole if the magistrate allows so. In case of a judicial custody, the maximum period of retention is 90 days, where the investigation related to offense is punishable by death, imprisonment, or life. Otherwise, it is 60 days where the investigation is related to an offense where the imprisonment is less than 10 years. So now, when a magistrate tells that, okay, he can be in judicial custody, for how long? Firstly, in case if it is a crime that can have a imprisonment with respect to life or death, in that case, those crimes the person is accused can be in the judicial custody for 90 days. In case of the other crimes that is less than 10 years, in that case, a person can be in the judicial custody for about 60 days. This is what is the difference between a police custody and a judicial custody. This is something that you should have little bit intricate details because this can be asked in your preliminary examination as well as the mains examination. Let's move ahead. 10 years of Make in India. Now, this was present in your newspaper also repeatedly. It is in small articles that were mentioned. Now, from the perspective of our understanding, we need to know what is Make in India, what were its objectives and goals, And if 10 years have been completed, so what has been performance of this particular scheme becomes also very critical for the civil services examination. Let's see. When I talk about Make in India, let's have a brief idea what this basically is all about. It was launched in 2014 with the aim to transform the country into a leading global manufacturing and investment destination. So that means so that India can be a hub of manufacturing, and so that a lot of investment can come in India. A hub of manufacturing at a global level is what was the aim. Now, this was led by the Department for the Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, DPIIT, under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Now, this is very important. You should know, because this can be asked as a statement in your preliminary examination also. As we move ahead, please understand, this is what the scheme in brief is all about, and this is the ministry that is basically leading it. As we move ahead, what were the basic objectives when the scheme was launched? First, to attract foreign investment. Second, to target to increase the manufacturing sector growth to 12 to 14% per annum over the medium term. That means over a short medium, not rather short or long, but for a medium term, 12 to 14% per annum growth should be there in the manufacturing sector, which was basically aimed by the Make in India scheme when it was basically launched. To increase the share of the manufacturing sector in the country's GDP from 16 to 25% by 2022. Now, please remember one thing, that because of COVID, all the targets got disrupted. So we will be thinking that have we achieved this or not? Please understand, automatically we saw that the huge crisis of COVID came. So whatever targets we have with respect to health, manufacturing and all would obviously be delayed by some time, obviously. But in spite of that also, we have done relatively well. So this was a basic scheme where you have to increase the share of the manufacturing sector from the 16% when what it was in 2014 to 25% by 2022. Another very important aspect was to create 100 million additional jobs by 2022. And lastly, to promote an export-led growth. Now, this is again a very, very important aspect. Now, all these objectives are basically focused on creating India a major manufacturing hub and boosting its exports. That will obviously have the ripple effects where economy would be boosted, more jobs would be created. And obviously, we know that manufacturing sector is very, very important for the economic development. So increasing the share in the GDP was also a very important ingredient. So these were the basic objectives when we basically talk about the Make in India schemes. Now, what were the pillars? Remember one thing, when I've written these pillars, it is by default in the examination when the Make in India scheme comes, they will definitely ask you like critically analyze the Make in India scheme with respect to the performance in one decade. In that case, you have to explain the scheme in brief, along with it mentions these pillars also, because the examiner wants to know the core idea what the scheme is and then the analysis. So you need to mention at least these 4 pillars along with the objectives. First pillar, new resources. New resources basically means improving the business environment, promote entrepreneurship and promoting the ease of doing business. Now, these were the basic aspect under the new processes. Second pillar was new infrastructure, building industrial corridors, smart cities, intellectual property rights promotion and protection was under the new infrastructural aspect. Along with these, many other dimensions are there, but also these are the main important ones. New sectors, FDI in defense production, insurance, medical devices, construction and railway infrastructure were under the new sectors which were earlier not open for the FDIs. Next is the new mindset. New mindset over here means the government to take the role of a facilitator rather than a regulator. That means the government is not going to unnecessarily intervene in the business activities and not be a hindrance for the business activities. Rather, it will be a facilitator for the promotion and more business coming to India. So these are the 4 basic pillars. First, again, new processes, new infrastructure, new sectors, and new mindset. These are the core pillars of the Make in India. Now let's move ahead and see what have been the highlights of the decade. So what we have basically achieved and how has this scheme been effective in changing something in India? Let's see that. FDI. If we see a cumulative FDI of 667 billion from 2014 to 2024, that means in these 10 years, there has been an increase by 119%. So that is again a very positive side when we see the Make in India's actual implementation on the ground. Exports. With respect to exports also, there has been a positive sign. Please remember again, COVID did dent all the exports and the economy, but over the time, if we cumulatively analyze this, we'll see one of the examples is merchandise export basically exceeded 437 billion from till the time 23-24. That is again a major aspect or an example where this Make in India scheme has been quite successful. As we move ahead, with respect to employment, the manufacturing employment grew from 57 million in 2017-18 to 64.4 million in 22-23. Again, the reason behind it's not rapid rise is there are various constraints also in the sector. Along with it, COVID did dent the economic prospects, did hurt a lot of industries, particularly the small and the medium scale industries, which did dent the prospects of employment in this particular sector. In the coming years, the government is very rigorously working towards promotion of the employment in these manufacturing sectors and facilitating through various schemes. So the targets that was for 2022 might be delayed by a few years, but we are on a track towards achieving those goals also. Ease of doing business. India's rank improved from 142nd in 2014 to 63 in 2019, right? So these are the certain aspects. Now, what were the certain schemes or aspects that the government adopt basically in order to implement the Make in India scheme at the ground level? First, PM Gati Shakti. Second, National Logistic Policy. Third, Industrial Corridor and Infrastructure Development. Next, Startup India Initiative and National Single Window System. So these are some. There are many more. These are some of the initiatives that have been taken under the Make in India in order to boost the manufacturing sector in India. Let's move ahead. Now, this is a very, very important article. Today is 27th September and it is the birth anniversary of Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh. See, this becomes very important for us from the perspective that not only studying Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh from the perspective that he is a freedom or has been a freedom fighter, a martyr, but also understanding what his ideology was and taking inspiration for what a person can have so much love for your country, that nothing more important than the country. So today, let us see a little bit of his life also. Along with it, let us see a little bit contribution. His contribution cannot be put in words, but from our aspects, let us see or understand what from the perspective of Union Public Service Commission, Civil Services Examination, we can learn and put if the question comes with respect to Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh. 27th September, birth anniversary of Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh. Let's move ahead. See, background. Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh was born on 27th September 1907 in Nalalpur district in now that is Punjab, Pakistan. Earlier it was United India. Education, he did his schooling from Dayanand Anglo-Vedic School and obviously he graduated from the National College, Lahore. If we move ahead, let us analyze his role in the freedom struggle and advocacy for the social reforms. With respect to associations, if we talk, he was a member of various organizations and associations. Along with it, he also founded various organizations. And let's see, have a brief overview. Hindustan Socialist Republic Association, HSRA. He was a member of this revolutionary organization which was aimed at reforming the society. Yes, socialism was also one of the major dimensions with respect to this particular organization. Next is Naujawan Bharat Sabha. Remember, he was a member of this. Along with it, he was founded the Naujawan Bharat Sabha. This is again very important. In 1926, to encourage the revolution against the Britishers. This is again very important because the Britishers were exploiting the workers, the peasants. So they wanted to basically organize a proper protest or revolution against the Britishers. That is why Naujawan Bharat Sabha was also one of the major organizations which Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh basically founded. If we move ahead, we'll see role in the independence movement. First is protest against the Britishers. He obviously, because of the policies of the Britishers, he was against imperialism and colonialism. He could not tolerate the aspect how could the foreign powers be ruling in India. So he supported Gandhiji even during the non-cooperation movement. So he was, along with the other policies later we see, he supported Gandhiji during the non-cooperation movement. Assassination of Saunders. Now please understand, Saunders was assassinatedly accidentally because Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh, along with the other colleagues of him who were fighting for the freedom struggle or revolutionaries during that time, other revolutionaries along with Bhagat Singh basically wanted to kill or assassinate James Scott, who was responsible for the Lathi charge, which basically took the death of Lala Lajpat Rai. But accidentally, Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh, along with his other revolutionaries, killed Saunders. Now, this was also basically shocked the British Empire that revolutionary activities on a rise with respect to the Indian freedom struggle. So that is why this created a different set of ideology in which now the people of this particular nation were ready to pick up arms to fight against the colonial powers. Next is bombing of the Central Legislative Assembly in Delhi along with Bhatukeshwar Dutt. This was basically the aim to make the deaf Britishers hear the concerns of the nation and the people who were suffering. So this was again a major aspect. Next is hunger strike in jail. This was because the condition of the prisoners, Indian prisoners in particular, who were there in jail was worthless. The British people who were basically criminals over there, they were given a different status, proper facilities, proper food, while the Indian people who were in the jail were basically discriminated. So that was against the reforms within the jail also, that hunger strike was basically conducted by Bhagat Singh, Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh, along with the other revolutionaries. If we go to his ideology, please understand, politics and society, he was a vivid follower of Karl Marx, that is Marxian, and Leninism. That means he was a follower of the socialistic ideology. He opposed capitalism and imperialism in all his speeches also. He emphasized on building a socialistic society because he viewed that the capitalism or over-capitalism, what has been presented in a view by the Britishers, has basically created the condition of India what it is during that time. What making a country which was rich with exports being going to, let us say, the Malmal or the various exports going to other parts of the country, even the European civilizations, we saw it was now in utter poverty. So that is why Shahid-e-Azam Bhagat Singh was of the view that capitalism is basically destroying the Indian society. So he basically emphasized on the Marxian and the Leninian philosophy, so that which could be actually implemented in India as well. So that was his basic ideology with respect to the politics and society. If we move ahead, religion, he declared himself an atheist. Now, very often people question that, why did he declare himself an atheist? This was a time, please understand, where there was a religious enmity within the Indian society. One religion was fighting another, there were various riots, and it was a beautiful play according to the Britishers, which was helping them to rule in India. So looking at that particular condition, he said, if religion is creating a divide and that is preventing a country from getting freedom, then I am an atheist. I do not follow any religion. This was the basic view that Bhagat Singh ji basically presented. Next is inclusive society. He basically was of the view, what we basically see in the 11th and the 12th 5-year plan earlier, that the word inclusive came. This was used by Bhagat Singh even earlier. He said, I want an inclusive society where every segment, every section of the society is a part of the development process, not selected few. So that was the aim towards an egalitarian society. Let's move ahead. Literature and famous quotes. Why I am an atheist, as I had mentioned, where he tells why he's an atheist, that I've explained you the reason. He gives various reasons while explaining this, but in his particular work. Yes, he was a brilliant poet also, and along with this given various quotes also. Few of them are, revolution is an inalienable right of mankind. Freedom is an imperishable birthright of all. Labor is a real sustainer of society. Now, these are certain quotes which you can use in your essays also, ethics paper also. Next is, man's duty is to try and endeavor. Success depends upon the chance and environment. Now, this is again a quotation that would be relevant when you're preparing for the civil services examination. I am a man and all that affects mankind concerns me. This is again a beautiful quote that can be asked in your ethics paper 4. Okay, that was the aspect of Shahid Azam Bhagat Singh. Let's move on to the aspect of today's major editorial. Please understand, this is regarding the pension scheme or the changes that have taken place. What I have done basically is, see, if you want to understand this topic, you need to know or have a brief idea what the various pension schemes or how they have evolved over the time. So what I have done is, this whole editorial will make no relevance if you do not know what the pension schemes are and what are the differences among those 3 pension schemes that have evolved over the time. So before even reading this or analyzing it, let's see the pension schemes, because we know that recently the UPS has come, the new pension scheme has come. Now this is a change over the older scheme that was the old pension scheme. Then in 2004 the new pension scheme came, and then we realized that the UPS or the new pension scheme has basically come. So let us analyze what this basic pension schemes are. See, the recent one which has been declared by the announced by the government is Unified Pension Scheme, the UPS. Before that, new pension scheme was going on, and OPS is the old pension scheme. Now please understand, this scheme was for the government employees till 2004. This new pension scheme started from 2004, and this year this has been announced, 2024. Now if you analyze these differences that have been presented, please understand, the PDF would be available in my Telegram account. You can see and analyze also. This is very important. Now let us see. This is the new one. This is the one that was going on, which was heavily criticized also. And this was the old one. Now see, pension amount. In the new one, 50% of the average basic pay in the last 12 months. This was market linked. That means how much you are contributing, your pension was based on that. There was no fixed percentage as like that. In this case, against the 50% of the last drawn salary along with the DA hikes. Employee contribution in this would be 10% of the basic salary. In this 10%, and there was none because complete contribution was done by the government in the old pension scheme. Government contribution again 18.5%, 14%. The entire cost was borne by the government. Is inflation indexation done? Because it is very important, because if inflation is rising and your pension is less, then you are basically losing on the money because the value of money decreases with rise in inflation. So yes, it is inflation indexed based on AICPI. That means All India Consumer Price Index industrial workers, which we basically based on, which we use as a means of adjusting the inflation. Next is no inflation indexation was done. That means the people who were in this pension schemes were further suffering. Yes, through the DA hikes. Family pension, that means 60% of the employee's pension amount based on the aggregate contribution and continues to the family after the retiree's death. This is family pension, that means after the death of the employee. Flexibility, there is limited flexibility with assured pension. High with the investment of the flexibility choice. That means how much investment has been made to the fund basically for the pension. That is what you will get. Over here, low because the fixed benefits were there. That means 50% of the last withdrawn was the pension that was you were getting. Portability, not portable. It is portable, universal. Risk factor, no market risk. Though it is saying no market risk, some market risk will exist. Subject to market rate, low risk because the government was the one which was backing this. Tax benefits are limited. Over here, because it was a contribution that you were making from your end, so that means tax benefits were also provided over here. Likely but not defined. Returns were fixed, over here variable and fixed because it was government determined. So this is again the basic differences. A lot of differences have been given between the or among the 3 pension schemes. I would request you to please pause this screen and see them, analyze them. Once you have done this, then you come to this particular editorial. What does this editorial say? See, in the introductory passage, the writer basically says that 3 major pension schemes have been there over the time as it has evolved. But he says that the new pension scheme is a rectification over the new, the the pension scheme, that UPS that has come now is a rectification from the new NPS that was there, because it created a lot of issues because the contribution had to be made on the basis of the person, how much he's contributing. There was issues with respect to market risk, and a lot of problems were there. So then the writer basically moves ahead and says the old pension scheme prior to 2004. That means he defines what the old pension scheme is here in this particular paragraph, which we have already done in the discussion. Then he goes on to says in 2004, the new pension scheme, the NPS comes, which we have already discussed in the chart. Then he says that basically there are a lot of problems with respect to the NPS, new pension scheme. You will be realizing how. We saw that inflation indexation were not there. It was market linked, so contribution had to be made by the people themselves rather than the old pension scheme where the government was completely responsible. Then we realized that subject to high market risk. So a lot of problems were there. That is why in this particular paragraph, he is basically criticizing the new pension scheme. Over here, when we come here, he says that the government is now moving towards again the welfare schemes or welfareism of the people as such, because again UPS can be taken as a better scheme from the NPS, though we cannot simply go back to the old pension scheme because that would create a burden on the government a lot. So we see that it is better than the NPS. So that is why he says that return for welfareism is being seen through the UPS. One of the reasons is that we saw during the COVID crisis, so many people died, so many people lost their jobs, people who did not have the access to the pensions also, let us say the contribution during the NPS was low, they received very less pension. So it created a lot of crisis. So they realized that it is important that we should again move towards the welfare aspect also. And this scheme was launched. Then again, we need to understand that from here till the aspect here, criticism of UPS is also done. What are the criticisms of the new pension scheme? Please understand that also now. See, though the scheme is fine, but it also has criticisms. Criticism like excluding the public sector workers. See, the UPS only covers the union government employees, excluding many public sector workers such as the teachers or the government, union government teachers. All the schools that come under the union government, the teachers have been excluded. Why? This is again a problem. Taxation, it is not clear how the lump sum payout under the UPS would be taxed. So they have not cleared the taxation aspect of this particular scheme. Next is sustainability. Now see, UPS is basically again will depend upon the fiscal health of the government. Tomorrow, if it happens that government says that it is creating a lot of burden on them, they might again change the scheme. So that is again a very problematic issue with respect to the sustainability also. So now all this PPT that you have seen would be available in my Telegram account. You can have a look at it and basically download it. So you can read it and make notes if you want. Otherwise, this lecture is important for your basic understanding of the topics. Let's move on to the first slide again. So this was the daily analysis from the Hindu from 27th of September 2024. I think you learn something. It is very important for you to read the newspapers, and we are making our effort to make you understand the various dimensions of the newspaper, how it has to be done, and what are the requirements of the civil services examination. We'll meet you tomorrow again with a daily analysis. Take care, and as you always say, Jai Hind.